What happens when an entitled HOA Karen accuses a kind young man of theft over a $27 bus ticket, and it all ends in a fiery courtroom meltdown? This is no ordinary HOA story, this is the moment justice hits back. And trust me, you're not ready for what happens next. Make sure to watch until the very end, because this showdown? It doesn't end in the courtroom. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's go. Order in the court. The judge's gavel slammed like thunder. But the courtroom wasn't quiet, not even close. Karen Doyle, the Homeowners Association vice president of Crestwood Oaks, was standing in front of the judge, red-faced, fists clenched, and screaming at the top of her lungs. "I am not paying for a bus ticket. That's not even HOA business. This is harassment." Her voice cracked as she pointed a trembling finger across the room at a young man in a faded blue hoodie, who sat calmly beside his public defender. The crowd gasped. The bailiff took a step forward. And that's when she snapped. Karen yanked a crumpled sheet of paper out of her leopard print handbag and threw it down in front of the judge like it was a bomb. "There. Look at it. He stole from the HOA fund. He bought a $27 bus ticket. With our dues." The judge leaned back, eyebrows raised. The prosecutor tilted her head, confused. But the young man, his hands folded quietly on the table, didn't move. He didn't say a word. His name was Jamal West, and what Karen didn't know was, this courtroom showdown. It was just getting started. Because of that $27 bus ticket? It wasn't what she thought it was. Not even close. But before we get to what really happened in court that day, let me tell you how it all began, months earlier, on a street where kindness was often confused with weakness, and power always wore lipstick and a clipboard. Crestwood Oaks was one of those neighborhoods where everything looked perfect on the outside. Manicured lawns. Painted fences. Patrolled sidewalks. But underneath the smiles and HOA newsletters was a quiet fear: don't cross Karen Doyle. She was the kind of woman who measured your grass with a ruler. Who fined people for leaving holiday lights up past January 2nd. Who once threatened to call animal control because someone's cat looked aggressive. Everyone walked on eggshells around her. Everyone, that is, except Jamal West. Jamal wasn't a rule breaker. He was just kind. Too kind, maybe. After graduating from community college, he moved back in with his grandmother, Miss Della, who lived in a small white bungalow at the edge of Crestwood Oaks. She had lived there for 40 years, back when the place was mostly farmland and dirt roads. Miss Della raised Jamal after his mom passed. She was all he had. And when her legs started to give out, he became her legs. Grocery runs. Church on Sundays. Doctor visits. He did it all. But Jamal didn't have a car. He walked everywhere. Or, when he had a few bucks, he caught the bus. Nobody noticed him much. He mowed neighbors' lawns for free, helped old Mr. Halverson with his porch steps, and even volunteered to organize HOA files after a pipe burst in the clubhouse basement. That was the first time Karen noticed him. She didn't like what she saw. "Too nice," she muttered to her friend Becky one day. "Nobody's that nice without wanting something." So she watched him. And then, she saw it. One morning, Jamal used the HOA clubhouse computer to print something. Then he went online. And used the HOA debit card to buy something. A bus ticket. Round trip. $27. That was all she needed. Karen didn't ask questions. She didn't call him in. She didn't look at the receipt. She just filed a complaint, froze the HOA account, and made a public announcement at the next neighborhood meeting. "There has been a financial violation. One of our community helpers has misused HOA funds for personal transportation. We are pursuing legal action." Jamal didn't argue. He simply stood up in front of 50 neighbors, cleared his throat, and said, "There's more to the story." Karen barked back, "The story is theft, Mr. West." Nobody stood up for him. Not even Miss Della. She was too sick to leave the house. The whispers started the next day. People stopped calling Jamal for help. Stopped smiling when he passed. One neighbor crossed the street to avoid him altogether. Jamal tried to explain, once. But nobody listened. So he let them think what they wanted. He kept helping his grandma. He kept showing up to court dates. He kept quiet. Until the day everything boiled over in front of a judge. But let me not get ahead of myself. There was a moment, a single day, that changed everything in this story. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was just quiet. And it started with a knock on Jamal's front door. It was a Thursday morning, gray skies, breeze drifting through the oak trees. Jamal opened the door to find a girl, maybe 14, standing there in a school uniform, holding a brown envelope. "Are you Jamal?" "Yes." She handed him the envelope. "I think this is yours. My mom said, you probably don't want anyone to see it." Before he could ask what she meant, she was gone. He opened the envelope. Inside was a letter. And a photo. The letter was from the hospice center 3 towns over. The photo was of Miss Della. Smiling. Sitting beside another woman in a hospital bed, holding hands. He stared at it for a long time. That was the secret. That was what the bus ticket was for. And he had kept it all to himself. The day Jamal used the HOA card was the day Miss Della called him crying. Her childhood friend, Eunice, was dying of cancer. No family. No children. She was alone in a sterile room an hour and a half away, asking for her church sister Della. Jamal had no money in his wallet. The HOA account had $43 left over from the clubhouse repair budget. He printed the bus itinerary. Bought the ticket. Brought Miss Della. She held her best friend's hand as she passed peacefully. That's all it was. A ride. A final goodbye. When they returned, Jamal put the receipt in the HOA folder. Filed it under Clubhouse Transportation and Emergency Use. And said nothing. Because he didn't want to drag his grandmother through a meeting or a mess. But the mess came anyway. And now, that envelope, the one delivered by the mysterious girl, was going to change everything. Because Karen wasn't just loud. She was sloppy. And Jamal was about to prove it. But first, something happened. Something strange. Just when he thought the neighborhood had forgotten him, someone slid a note under his door. No name. Just 5 words written in black ink. "I know what she did." And then, a knock at the back door. Jamal froze. The knock came again, 2 soft taps, a pause, then one more. He stepped cautiously toward the kitchen door, heart racing, still holding the letter and the photo in one hand. He didn't know whether to expect a neighbor, a prank, or Karen herself back with another accusation. But when he pulled the curtain aside and peeked out, he saw something he didn't expect. It was Mr. Halverson. The same Mr. Halverson who hadn't looked Jamal in the eye for weeks. The one who once made Jamal peach cobbler every Sunday and then suddenly stopped inviting him over. He looked old that morning. Tired. Like he hadn't slept all night. He held a crumpled folder under his arm. "Hey," he said quietly when Jamal opened the door. Jamal didn't answer, just stepped back so the man could come inside. "Mr. Halverson shuffled in, set the folder on the table, and sat down without being asked. He rubbed his hands together like he was trying to warm them. "I found something," he said after a while. "And it doesn't sit right with me." Jamal sat across from him. Mr. Halverson opened the folder and pulled out 3 printouts, photocopies of Crestwood Oaks HOA financial statements from the last quarter. At the top corner of each was Karen's signature. Neat. Perfect. Loopy. "Look, Mr. Halverson said, pointing to the first page. "Here, she marked a $400 administrative fee on the same day she had a mani-pedi at that new spa across town. Then here, another $120 for transport of supplies the day after Becky's daughter's birthday party. You know, the one where they rented the chocolate fountain? Jamal stared at the papers, lips pressed tight. Jamal, the old man said, voice soft, I think she's been using the HOA card for personal stuff for months. Jamal took a long breath and looked down at the envelope in his hand, the photo, the hospice letter, the final bus ticket. And then he looked back at the man sitting across from him. Why are you telling me this now? He asked. Why not before? Mr. Halverson's face twitched. Because I was scared. Same as everyone else. She came after my wife for planting roses outside the flower bed lines. Fined us. Then told us our mailbox was outdated. We just wanted peace. Jamal didn't speak for a moment. I don't want revenge, he said. I just want to be left alone. Mr. Halverson nodded slowly. That's not how this works anymore. She started a fire, Jamal. She lit it. Now you either put it out, or let it burn you alive. The next morning, Jamal walked to the Crestwood Oaks clubhouse. Nobody spoke to him as he passed. A few curtains shifted. A lawnmower stopped running for a beat and then resumed. Inside the clubhouse, Karen was already at her usual seat. Becky was beside her. They were going through files, sipping iced coffee, pretending not to notice Jamal as he entered. He walked up to the front table and gently placed the folder Mr. Halverson had given him right on top of Karen's binder. She didn't look up. This isn't your office anymore, Jamal. I was never paid, he said evenly. So technically, I never had an office. Karen finally glanced at him, her eyes sharp. You really want to play games right now? No games. Just returning documents. Thought you'd want them before court. Becky leaned forward, trying to peek inside the folder. Karen closed it before she could see. Jamal nodded once. See you in court. And he walked out. That night, he got another note. This time it wasn't slipped under the door. It was taped to his car window. Same handwriting. Same ink. She erased something. Attached was a tiny flash drive. Jamal didn't own a laptop, but he still had the old clubhouse key. The one nobody remembered to take from him. At midnight, he unlocked the clubhouse door, crept inside, and plugged the flash drive into the HOA computer. There was a single file. A screen recording. It showed someone logging into the HOA accounting software using Karen's password. She went into the records from 3 weeks ago, right after Jamal was accused, and edited the transaction description. It originally read, Emergency transit to medical facility. Authorized by board VP. She changed it to Unauthorized personal travel, bus fare. Jamal watched the cursor blink. Then she hit save. Logged out. And left. The time stamp was clear. She hadn't just accused him, she rewrote the truth. The morning of the court hearing, Jamal arrived wearing his cleanest shirt, ironed slacks, and the same worn shoes he'd walked in for years. Miss Della couldn't come, her health had declined too much. But she pressed his hand that morning and told him, walk in there with your shoulders high, baby. You've done nothing wrong. Karen showed up in a pantsuit and heels, dragging 2 overstuffed binders behind her. Becky carried a thermos and handed out copies of a community petition, calling for Jamal's permanent removal from any HOA business. 53 signatures. The courtroom was crowded. People from the neighborhood filled every bench. Even the mayor's assistant was there. Crestwood Oaks had a reputation, and this mess was turning into a public drama. Jamal's public defender stood beside him, flipping through notes. Karen took the stand first. She was all drama. She talked about responsibility, fiscal discipline, and setting an example. She raised her voice. She pointed fingers. She accused Jamal of manipulating the elderly for personal gain. And that's when the prosecutor asked the one question Karen wasn't ready for. Do you have the original transaction file from the HOA system, Mrs. Doyle? Karen blinked. What? The unedited file. She hesitated. There was no edit. The prosecutor turned to the judge. We have video proof, Your Honor. Gasps echoed. Karen turned pale. And then, like it all hit her at once, she lost it. I am not paying for a bus ticket, she screamed, lunging forward. The judge slammed the gavel. Order in the court. The bailiff stepped up. Karen reached into her bag and threw a paper at the judge. There. That's what he stole. A $27 bus ticket. And just like that, every single person in the courtroom saw her for what she truly was. But even then, the story wasn't over. Because while everyone stared at Karen's meltdown, Jamal glanced toward the back of the room. There, in the last row, sat the girl who delivered the first envelope. She wasn't alone. Next to her was a woman in a beige coat. And that woman? She was looking straight at Jamal. Holding something in her hand. A second envelope. Jamal's heart beat faster. The woman in the beige coat didn't blink. She didn't smile. She just sat there, steady and still, watching him like she knew something he didn't. The second envelope in her hand rested on her lap, sealed with a plain white sticker. No label. No name. The courtroom was still in chaos. Karen was being gently escorted away by the bailiff, her voice echoing down the hall as she shouted about conspiracies and this entire neighborhood turning into a zoo. Becky chased after her, waving a binder over her head, while the judge shook his head and ordered a 10-minute recess. Jamal didn't move. His eyes stayed locked on the back row. And finally, the woman stood. She stepped carefully down the aisle, the girl from earlier trailing behind her. When she reached Jamal, she handed him the envelope, no words, no explanation, then turned around and walked away without a sound. Jamal stared after her for a long time. Who was that? His public defender asked. I don't know, Jamal whispered. But I think she's the reason I'm still standing. They went outside to the bench under the oak tree near the courthouse steps. Jamal sat down, peeled the sticker open, and pulled out a small collection of documents. A note was attached, handwritten in neat, cursive letters. Jamal, you don't know me. But I worked in the finance department last year before Karen forced me out. I found these during an audit and saved them because I had a feeling they'd matter one day. I didn't know when or how. But today seemed like that day. I'm sorry I stayed quiet for so long. Keep fighting. You're not alone. Her name was signed at the bottom. Amelia Crow. He recognized the name. She had only lasted 5 months as HOA treasurer before Karen told everyone she was unqualified and had left on her own. The documents were copies of email exchanges between Karen and a man named Henry Trask, a pool contractor. The emails were casual at first, but then, strange. One message caught Jamal's eye. Just listed under pool repairs. I don't care what it's actually for. He's going to Vegas anyway. Tell him to keep quiet and not ask questions. And another. Use the leftover clubhouse budget. Jamal's too soft to notice. If he does, we'll say it was part of landscaping maintenance. The date on that message? 2 weeks before the bus ticket incident. Jamal leaned back on the bench, stunned. Karen hadn't just accused him. She'd been stealing, boldly, quietly, for months. And when she saw him in the way, she turned on the spotlight. But now he had everything. Still, something didn't sit right. Why had Amelia waited? Why had she sent the girl to deliver that first envelope and now this one? Before he could think more on it, his defender checked the time. Jamal, she said, we're back on in 5. He nodded, stood up slowly, and walked back into the building. Inside, the mood had shifted. The crowd was quieter. More eyes were on Jamal now, and for the first time, they didn't look angry. They looked curious. He took the stand. His voice was calm. Clear. He told them about his grandmother. About the call from the hospice center. About Miss Eunice. About the bus ride and the emergency trip. He had no time, no cash, just a dying woman asking for the only friend she had left. He explained that the HOA card had $43 left from a budgeted line item labeled miscellaneous transport. That he printed the receipt. That he logged the trip. Then, slowly, he pulled out the printed email from Karen to the contractor. The courtroom fell completely silent. The judge read the note. His eyes narrowed. Then the prosecutor stood. "Your Honor," she said, "we are filing an immediate motion to suspend Mrs. Doyle from her position pending investigation into HOA fund misuse. We also request access to HOA financial archives for the past 12 months. The judge nodded once. Granted. Becky, who had returned to the courtroom quietly during Jamal's testimony, let out a loud gasp. She said it was just a bonus. For managing so much. That's what she told us. Jamal didn't respond. He didn't have to. The silence said it all. The court adjourned for the day. Karen's hearing was postponed pending investigation. Jamal was cleared. No fines. No probation. No black mark. He stepped out into the warm afternoon light like a man who had just been given his name back. Neighbors lingered outside. Some gave him nods. A few whispered, embarrassed. But one voice broke the awkward quiet. A young boy, probably 10, ran up and blurted out, "Hey! You fixed Miss Della's roof last year, right?" Jamal smiled. "Yeah. That was me." The boy grinned. "My mom said you're a hero." Jamal didn't feel like a hero. Not yet. He walked home slowly, the folder clutched under one arm. He had made it through the fire, but not without scars. And yet, just as he reached his front porch, something caught his eye. A piece of paper, tucked under the welcome mat. He pulled it out. Same handwriting. One line. "It's not over. There's one more." And taped to the bottom corner? A photo. Karen. Standing in a parking lot. Talking to someone Jamal recognized. Henry Trask. But not last year. Not last month. It was dated 3 days ago. Jamal stared at the photo. It was grainy but clear enough to make out the two figures. Karen was angled slightly toward the man, her hand on her hip, her face turned in mid-sentence. Henry Trask stood with his arms crossed, looking uncomfortable, maybe even cornered. Behind them, a dark sedan with no license plate in view. 3 days ago. Karen had already known the court hearing was coming. She must have felt the walls closing in. So why was she meeting with Henry again? What were they trying to clean up? Jamal sat on the edge of his couch, the photo laid out before him, alongside the letter and email printouts. He felt the pressure building again, not the kind that came from fear, but from the weight of unfinished truth. He thought about tossing it aside. Thought about walking away. He had already been cleared. Let the HOA and the lawyers deal with Karen. He had nothing else to prove. But then, he thought about his grandma. Miss Della believed in doing what was right even when it was hard. Even when no one was watching. Even when you'd already won. So Jamal picked up his phone and dialed the number on the corner of the letter Amelia Crow had sent. The line rang once. Twice. Then clicked. "Hello?" It was her. "Miss Crow," Jamal said. "It's Jamal West." There was a pause. There was a pause. "I was hoping you'd call," she replied. Her voice was soft but alert. Like someone who stayed ready, even after the storm. "I got the envelope," Jamal said. The photo. Why now? Because I saw them together again, she said. And I overheard enough to know Karen's not just trying to cover her tracks, she's trying to erase them. Jamal sat up straighter. What do you mean? She's planning to pin something big on Henry, Amelia said. She's already rewritten emails. Probably deleted texts. But Henry, he's scared. I think he's trying to disappear. Do you know where he is? Not exactly, she replied. But I know who does. The next day, Jamal walked up the cracked steps of a faded one-story house near the industrial end of town. Old tires leaned against the side wall, and an "I break for tacos" bumper sticker peeled off a rusted mailbox. The woman who opened the door looked like she hadn't slept in 3 days. Are you looking for Henry? She asked before Jamal could even introduce himself. He nodded. Amelia said you might know. The woman snorted. That man owes me 3 months of back rent and a brand new air fryer. You got something to make that worth my while? Jamal didn't blink. He reached into his wallet and handed her $40, the only money he had left. She raised an eyebrow. Are you serious? Yeah. She shrugged, took the cash, and jerked her head toward the alley. He's crashing behind the auto shop 2 blocks down. In the trailer. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just tell him to stop stealing my damn extension cords. Henry's trailer was barely holding together. One window was covered with a black trash bag. The other was cracked and taped up from the inside. Jamal knocked. No answer. He knocked again. A shadow moved. Go away, a voice barked. It's Jamal. From Crestwood Oaks. There was a pause. Then the door creaked open a few inches. One tired, bloodshot eye peered out. You here to finish me off? No, Jamal said. I'm here to ask why Karen met with you 3 days ago. Henry sighed and stepped back. Come in. But don't sit on the couch, it's busted. Inside smelled like motor oil and microwaved beans. Jamal stood near the door while Henry slumped into a folding chair. She said she was going to get me out of trouble, he mumbled. Said she'd write a letter to clear my name with the contractors board if I agreed to take the fall. The fall for what? The clubhouse roof job, Henry muttered. She never filed the right permits. Used leftover funds to pay her cousin's company under the table. Said it'd be fine if nobody looked too close. But now she's scared. Jamal rubbed his forehead. She's trying to wipe her name off everything. Henry nodded. She gave me a script. What to say if anyone came asking. Even told me to say you were in on it if I had to. Jamal's chest burned. She's planning something big, Henry said. Wants one final, clean sweep before the audit hits. Says it's her way of resetting things. Jamal pulled out his phone and snapped a photo of Henry, time-stamped. Can you repeat everything you just said for a statement? Henry groaned. Are you recording? No. Not yet. But I will. Henry shook his head. Man. I'm tired. I don't want any more trouble. You already have trouble, Jamal said. The only way out is through. That night, Jamal emailed Amelia the photo and the statement. She replied within the hour. Thank you. I've just forwarded this to the district attorney's office. You've done your part. Let the law take it from here. Jamal exhaled. For the first time in weeks, he felt like maybe, just maybe, things would return to normal. He closed his laptop, stretched, and went into the kitchen to fix a sandwich. And that's when the lights cut out. The whole house went dark. He froze. Checked the porch light through the window. Out. He opened the door, stepped outside, and his breath caught. Spray painted across his white picket fence in thick red letters were 2 words. Drop it. Jamal backed up slowly, heart pounding. This wasn't over. Not even close. The letters were still dripping. Bright, angry red paint ran in fat streams down the slats of Jamal's white fence, pooling onto the dewy grass below. He stood frozen in the doorway, his sandwich forgotten on the counter behind him. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. "Drop it." The message was loud and personal. Jamal turned and scanned the street. No movement. No voices. Every porch light on his block was off, except one. 2 houses down, Becky's curtains fluttered, just for a second. Then they closed. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he sat on his living room floor with his back against the wall, the glow of the streetlight casting pale orange stripes across the carpet. Every time the wind rustled a branch or a car door slammed in the distance, his muscles tensed. But no one came back. Morning broke slow and gray. Miss Della called for him from her room just before dawn. She didn't need to see his face to know something was wrong. "They did something, didn't they?" she asked, voice raspy. Jamal sat at her bedside. "Yeah. But I'm okay." "Are you sure about that?" "No," he admitted. "But I'm not letting it stop me." Miss Della smiled faintly. "You're just like your mama. Stubborn with a soft heart." He kissed her forehead and rose. "I'm going to fix this, Grandma." Outside, he sprayed down the fence. It took 2 hours, and the red still stained faintly through the white paint. But when he was done, he stood there staring at it for a long time, breathing deeply. Not because it was over, but because he knew the next move had to count. He wasn't just playing defense anymore. He was taking this thing apart. One piece at a time. Later that afternoon, Jamal walked into the town records office. The lady at the desk recognized him. "Back again?" "Yeah. I need every permit pulled for Crestwood Oaks HOA projects in the last 2 years." She blinked. "That's a lot of paperwork." "I can wait." 3 hours later, Jamal had what he needed, a thick folder of permits, invoices, and authorizations, or lack of them. Karen had filed permits for 2 projects, the pool gate replacement and the community garden fence. But the clubhouse roof? The gym floor resurfacing? The contractor's plumbing work? Nothing. Not a single permit. Jamal flipped through the receipts. One caught his eye. $3,800 billed to the HOA for emergency water mitigation and pipe repair. He remembered that week. There hadn't been a single drop of water damage. He was the one who cleaned the clubhouse after the supposed pipe burst, and all he found was a tiny leak under the utility sink. He'd fixed it himself with a $6 rubber washer. He took photos of everything. Then he drove to City Hall. Amelia met him in the lobby, dressed in black slacks and a blazer, like she'd been preparing for this moment since she left the HOA. "Come with me," she said. They walked into the compliance office together. 2 hours later, Jamal had submitted a full report, with attachments. The investigator, a tall man with thick glasses named Darren Firth, took it all in slowly. "We've been tracking her for a while," he said finally. "But this might be the missing piece." "What happens now?" Jamal asked. "She's already suspended from HOA activity," Darren replied. "But if we prove she committed financial fraud, she could be prosecuted. And the HOA could be placed under state oversight for a year. The whole board might be restructured." Jamal nodded. But a cold feeling curled in his gut. Karen wouldn't go down quietly. And he was right. Because that evening, as he pulled into his driveway, he saw something sitting on his doorstep. A package. No return address. Wrapped in brown paper, tied with twine. He parked, approached it carefully, and picked it up. It was surprisingly heavy. He took it inside, laid it on the kitchen table, and opened it slowly. Inside was a brick. A real brick. Spray painted on one side were the same words he'd seen on his fence. "Drop it." But there was something else too. Tucked inside the package was a single photograph, one that made Jamal's stomach drop. It was Miss Della, sitting in her chair by the window, taken through the glass. Someone had been standing just outside their home, watching. That night, Jamal didn't sleep again. He called the police, filed a report. The officer nodded, made notes, and promised a patrol car would cruise by more often. But Jamal could see it in his eyes. Without proof of who left the package, there wasn't much they could do. Still, something had changed. This wasn't about money anymore. It was personal. And then, just when Jamal thought it couldn't get worse, the very next morning, he walked outside to grab the newspaper and found a white envelope duct taped to his mailbox. Inside? A court summons. Karen Doyle was suing him for harassment, defamation, and breach of privacy. She was trying to flip the whole thing. Twist it. Break him down before he could finish what he started. But Jamal didn't flinch. He knew one thing for sure now. Karen wasn't just corrupt. She was scared. And scared people make sloppy mistakes. So Jamal opened his laptop, typed out an affidavit, attached every photo, every statement, and every recording he had, including the new photo of Miss Della and the brick. Then he called the one person he hadn't spoken to yet. Mr. Halverson. Yeah, the old man answered, wary. I need you to testify, Jamal said. You said you were tired of being afraid. This is your chance. Silence. Then, you got a suit that fits a retired carpenter? Jamal smiled for the first time in 2 days. I'll bring you one myself. But just as he hung up the phone, his doorbell rang. He opened it. And standing there was Karen, wearing sunglasses, smiling, holding a restraining order. And behind her, 2 local news cameras. Click. The first camera flashed just as Jamal stepped onto his porch, blinking against the sunlight, his breath catching in his throat. Karen stood with a rehearsed smile on her lips, her blonde hair tucked neatly behind her ears, a crisp pink blouse buttoned all the way to her neck, and her favorite clipboard tucked under her arm like a weapon. Beside her stood a local reporter from Channel 8, holding a mic and speaking into the camera with that bright, dramatic flair Jamal had seen during car crashes and mayoral scandals. We're live outside the home of Jamal West, the man at the center of what's now being called the Crestwood HOA financial crisis, the reporter said. Moments ago, Karen Doyle, acting vice president of the HOA, arrived with a restraining order, claiming she has been harassed, threatened, and publicly humiliated by Mr. West. Karen stepped forward, her smile widening for the camera. I just want peace in my community, she said, holding up the paper like it was an award. I've done nothing wrong. This is all an attempt to silence me for speaking up. Jamal felt heat rise in his chest. Not from anger, but from disbelief. She was flipping the whole thing. And the cameras were eating it up. Miss Della, watching from her window, slowly pulled the curtain shut. She'd seen enough. Jamal stepped down from the porch. Karen, he said, loud and clear. You don't want to do this. Karen didn't flinch. Oh, I've already done it. She turned back to the reporter. He's been spying on me. Following me. Hacking HOA emails. I even have reason to believe he vandalized his own property for sympathy. Jamal opened his mouth to respond, but someone beat him to it. Lies. A voice rang out across the street. Everyone turned. It was Becky. Holding a folder. Looking shaken, but fierce. He told the truth, Becky said, her voice trembling. I saw the receipts. I saw what she did. I didn't want to be next. Karen's smile faltered. What are you doing, Becky? She hissed. Becky walked up beside Jamal and handed him the folder. Everything's in here, she said. The fake expenses, the altered emails, even the text she sent me asking to handle the narrative before the last HOA vote. Karen lunged toward her. "You backstabbing." But before she could finish, another camera clicked. Then another. A second reporter ran up from across the street. More neighbors started pouring out of their homes. Phones up. Recording. Jamal took a breath and faced the first reporter. "Would you like a statement?" The man nodded quickly, mic in hand. Jamal looked straight into the camera. "I've lived here my whole life," he said. "I never stole from anyone. I took care of my neighbors. I used that card once, to help my grandmother visit her dying friend." Karen knew that. She rewrote the report. She lied. And she tried to bury it. But she forgot something important. He looked around at the crowd now forming. People have limits. And this neighborhood's finally reached theirs. Becky nodded beside him. And then, like fate was scripting it, a police cruiser pulled up. Out stepped Officer Graves, the same officer who'd taken Jamal's vandalism report days earlier. He approached slowly, glanced at the cameras, and then held out a warrant. "For Karen Doyle," he said. "On charges of falsifying financial documents, harassment, obstruction of an investigation, and witness intimidation." The silence was instant. Karen's mouth dropped open. You can't be serious, this is a joke." She turned to the cameras again. "You're filming this, right? You see what they're doing to me? I am the HOA. I built this community. But it was too late." Officer Graves cuffed her gently, reading her rights. As he led her toward the cruiser, Karen's voice cracked. "This isn't over. Jamal West is a liar. A manipulator. He's. The door closed behind her. And the cruiser pulled away. The cameras stayed on Jamal. But he didn't pose. He didn't gloat. He just stood there quietly as the moment passed. Later that evening, Jamal walked his street like he had for years. This time, people waved. Mr. Halverson offered him pie from the porch. The kid down the street tossed him a basketball and asked if he could help repaint the fence. And for the first time in a long time, Jamal laughed. Not loud. Not for the cameras. Just to himself. The HOA board dissolved within a week. A temporary council was set up, and Jamal was asked to lead it. He declined, offered to help behind the scenes instead. The audits revealed over $25,000 misused under Karen's watch. She faced multiple charges and was banned from serving in any HOA-related position again. But that didn't matter to Jamal. What mattered was this. He never had to say, "I told you so." Because the truth said it for him. And as for the final photo in that second envelope? The one of Miss Della through the window? Turns out, the person who took it wasn't an enemy. It was protection. Amelia had posted someone to watch the house. Just in case. Jamal smiled when he found out. Not because he liked being watched. But because, for once, it meant someone was watching with him. Not against him. And that was enough. So, what started with a bus ticket and a lie, ended with handcuffs and karma, caught on camera. Do you think Karen got what she deserved? Or do you think Jamal should have walked away? Tell us in the comments, we read every one. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss a moment of drama, justice, and real stories that matter. This was This HOA Lost, and we'll see you in the next video.